I think we're going to start, Rich. I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Lancaster County Planning Commission of June 28th, 2023. A printed agenda is available outside the hearing room, and a copy of the full agenda, including the staff reports, is available online or at the Planning Department, room 213. The Open Meetings Act is posted just inside the doors at the back of the room. If you parked in the parking lot across the street to the north, the gate is open and no parking coupons are needed. Out of courtesy for those attending this meeting, commissioners and the staff, cell phones may not be used in the chamber during any portion of this meeting. We appreciate your cooperation. The Planning Commission action today is final on the following items. 1.1, Special Permit 080528, and 1.2, Special Permit 23022. Any aggrieved person may appeal final action of the Planning Commission to the City Council or the County Board by filing a notice of appeal with the clerk within 14 days following the action of the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission action on all other items is a recommendation to the City Council or County Board. The first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held June 14th, 2023.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second, Joy?
Shelley?
Moore,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Minutes approved.
Thank you. The next item of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be called at the same time and will not be scheduled for a separate public hearing unless there is a request from someone wishing to speak or at the request of a commission member. I will ask Shelley to read all the consent agenda items onto the record. Once those items are read, she will ask if there is anyone wishing to speak. If you wish to speak on an item on the consent agenda, we would ask that you stand and state that item. That item will then be removed from the consent agenda and scheduled as a separate public hearing under Section 3 of today's agenda. All items remaining on the consent agenda will be voted upon in total with a motion for approval. Shelley, will you please call the items on the consent agenda?
I want to please note that agenda item 1.1, special permit 080528 is being removed from the consent agenda and scheduled for public hearing. First item for consent is item 1.2, special permit 23022 to allow for a 110-foot tall silo exceeding the allowed 70-foot height limit in the I-1 Industrial District on property generally located at 1816 Dudley Street. This is final action. Next item is item 1.3, miscellaneous 23005 to review the proposed determination that the industrial and Superior Street redevelopment area be declared blighted and substandard as defined in the Nebraska Community Development Law. The study area is approximately 153 acres, generally located between Industrial Avenue on the West Superior Street on the north and Salt Creek on the east and south. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on these items?
Yes.
The 75-foot special permit 2300 or 022, we had a few emails back and forth as a neighborhood organization. They decided not to take a stand on it, but I was included in those.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Shelley?
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting these sites to be disclosed?
I don't believe so.
If there is anyone here wishing to speak on these consent agenda items, please stand and state that item.
Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on any item on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will take a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second, Core?
Shelley?
Core,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Approved 6-0.
There are no requests for deferral, so we will now proceed to public hearing. Prior to staff making a brief presentation, each staff person should state their name, agency, and address. The applicant will then be requested to present his or her testimony, followed by those who wish to testify in support, followed by those who wish to testify in opposition. The staff will then be given an opportunity to respond to the testimony, and then the applicant shall have an opportunity for rebuttal. Each person testifying should state their name and address and shall have 5 minutes to speak. unless additional time is requested and granted. Clerk will use the light system to help aid your timing for your testimony. The lights will appear on the monitors provided. The green light indicates the start for testimony. Yellow light represents 1 minute remaining, and the red light indicates that your 5 minutes has expired, and the clerk will indicate that your time is up. If during your testimony you have copies of documents or materials you would like distributed to the Planning Commission members and or included as part of the record, please provide them to the clerk. The Planning Commission will vote immediately at the close of the public hearing unless the commission votes to defer action or continue the public hearing. Shelley, please call the first public hearing item.
Yes, item 1.1, special permit 08052A, amending the existing special permit to increase the maximum number of allowed children in the daycare from 100 to 160 on property generally located at 7244 South 29th Street. This is final action. Are there any ex parte communications to be disclosed on this application?
I don't see any.
Are there any ex parte communications that took place or additional information you learned while visiting any of this site to be disclosed?
No. Ben?
Good afternoon, Ben Callahan with the Planning Department, 555 South 10th Street, 68508. This is a request to amend an existing special permit, and this is along South 29th Street, just south of Pine Lake Road. Here's the Hamilton Heights daycare that currently exists today. They are looking to amend. The special permit was approved in 2008 to allow 100 children at the daycare, and are looking to increase to 160 on site. A couple things to note: this would be included within the Southridge Village use permit today. So all of extending north to Pine Lake is all within the use permit. Zoned 03, which requires a special permit for a daycare when there's more than 16 children. So that's originally why that was approved. With the site plan, they are proposing to finish the interior in the basement to allow more space, so they're not expanding on the building, no expansions to the playground. And the applicant did submit a site plan which looks very similar to what was approved in 2008. Some of the main questions that came up would be with parking and any increase. So they did provide a parking exhibit, which is a little difficult to see, but this is all shared parking throughout the use permit. So with their proposed increase, they would require an additional 18 spaces. So the daycare would need 39 spaces to meet our parking standard, so that they still are sufficient within the area. And then the use permit as a whole would still have over 40 excess spaces. Outside of that, let's see. A couple other things to note would be there is R3 residential that it surrounds on the east and to the west, and then it would be O3, there's multifamily to the west, and then H4 and O3 within the use permit to the north. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Ben, I'm curious, with the boundary that's there right now, the boundary on the north side, it looks like either, is that that the first line of parking is actually included within this special permit on the north. Is that correct?
There's parking along this, on the south side, I guess, of the line as well, and then parking through here.
Okay, thank you.
Is that where you're counting the stalls that belong to this place, or are you just counting overall the whole,
That's including the 43 stalls. That
So, let's see. It's a little difficult to see, but so they show additional spaces here by the playground, 8 here, 17 here, and then so on the other side would be 19 stalls along that side. And that is one thing that we wanted to note, is that within the use permit as a whole, one owner of the use permit area. Let's see. So this is actually how it's laid out with each building within their lot, and then all of the parking within that use permit is within one outlot for shared parking between the tenants.
There's some mention of a lower parking lot. Can you show me where they're talking about?
I believe on that, and the applicant may correct me, I believe with lower, it's down towards the playground here. There's a slope.
Okay.
And then they would have with the basement being finished, they'll also have a secondary lower entrance for pickup and drop off.
Ben?
Oh, go ahead.
Right.
The shared parking, the additional spots, are those to be designated for the childcare facility only, or is it just first come, first served?
I don't believe they'll be designated much like this area today. It's just a common parking across the facility.
It's a use permit, so all of the parking is considered together, right? Yeah.
Do you know the plan for drop-off, or will that be a applicant question?
Somewhat here, so they do show, so they'll still keep their original design that is there today. That was one thing we worked with the applicant. There was some parking that was happening at an angle that was blocking the drive. So we did talk with them on that, and they are making sure that this stays open now to show the drop off as just a pull up, and then would leave the site exiting north.
So that folks can still get around those cars and park if that drop-off lane is full.
Correct.
Okay.
One of the letters that we received was, a couple of them actually, were talking about a blind spot caused by dumpsters. Can you point those out?
I believe that's when they're exiting the site with a dumpster. I don't know if it's, I believe right here, when they're coming around the turn, and that would be one thing possibly the applicant could speak on as well, but that would be internal on the site, so it could be that could be mitigated or moved if needed.
That was one of my questions, if those could be moved. I'm also wondering, can we put conditions on the special permit, such as like making them put in a speed bump, or saying no parking along South 29th Street? Can we do that?
So I may bring up Steve on that one, but I don't believe for any improvements on South 29th would be handled by LTU in general.
That is correct. So South 29th Street is the public street, and the daycare is just one of many people who are driving up and down the street. The street continues quite a bit further to the south, so you have a lot of neighborhood traffic as well as the commercial traffic. So concerns about speeding on 29th Street really should be addressed by LTU. But as Ben noted, since this is one large internal parking lot that's owned by Southridge Village LLC, they could certainly work with their tenants on if they wanted to put up signage that says this is your stall, that's their stall, or move the dumpsters or put in internal speed bumps. None of those things are restricted by the city.
So if they wanted to put a speed bump in the parking lot, we couldn't require that on this special permit. That would have to be on the overall use permit.
Well, this special permit is a subset of the larger one, so we could recommend it, though I wouldn't know where we would immediately recommend that would be. Because partly, as you're coming down the hill, you must turn left to get, if you're exiting that direction. So when people are mentioning speeding through the parking lot, it's difficult to know, because already there's several turns you have to make as to what is meant by speeding. So without really a lot of more particular information, it'd be very difficult for us to recommend to you where any speed bump internal to the parking lot might be.
Ben, I have a couple of questions. The building that's leaving up what you have there, the building marked B1 through B4, where is the entrance to that building? Is it on the south side or the north side?
I believe there's two sides for
Okay,
entrance.
you can
and
enter from either side of the building. Okay. And the actual exit is up past B4, up on the left, correct? That's the exit from the parking lot. Is that correct?
There's one here directly west
Yeah.
of B4. Mhm.
Right. Okay. Other questions for Ben at this time? See if I have any other questions right now. There was a comment in the staff report that in the 15 years that this use permit has been in place, the planning department is not aware of any complaints.
Correct, yeah.
And the play area, I just wanted to clarify, one area it said it was 4,000 square foot, and the another area it said it was 8,600.
Yes, I believe on the plan they had it broken into two
I see.
separate, so there is a larger portion on the north, and then there's a smaller section on the east side of the building.
Got it. Thank you. And then there was some comment about a unique condition that was being removed, but there wasn't any clarification. Could you describe that for us?
Yeah, and in 2008, when the special permit was approved, this will be too small to see, the original permit actually tried to regulate like the number of children that could be outside at one time based on the percentage of yard area. And to our knowledge, so when this came back, like I said, we haven't had any complaints with the property or any concerns. And then it's also realizing that's extremely hard to regulate with how many children can be outside at one time for the facility. So in general, and to my knowledge across the city, we've not regulated any other daycares with that type of percentage playground area.
Other questions for Ben? Okay, thank you very much. We'll now take testimony from the applicant.
Hello, I'm Natasha Olson with Hamilton Heights Child Development Center, 7244 South 29th Street.
Great.
So I just want to start with our license through DHHS is a little bit different. We are currently licensed for 130 children through DHHS. We are asking for an additional 15 with DHHS, which would put our license up to 145. The chances that we have 145 kids on property all at the same time are very minimal. Those additional 15 kids would be school agers, which is what we are wanting to finish our basement for, so that we can increase the amount of schools that we can transport to. We get a lot of phone calls from Wysong Elementary because they don't have the need for childcare is not being fit in that area. And we just don't feel like right now with the space that we have that we could take on another school.
Okay, so you're saying that your current license is at 130, although the space through planning is allowed for 100.
Correct.
So the licensing is a little different. You're asking for an additional 15, although we're looking at 160. You're saying that there would never it's actually 145 is the number.
Correct.
Based on licensing, and that extra you're not expanding your infant rooms or your toddler or preschool rooms. You're expanding your capacity to do before and after school care.
Correct.
Okay.
So right now the basement's unfinished. So our school agers are in kind of a small gym area. And again, we've had to turn people away because it's a tight space for the number that we've got. While in the summer they're not there a ton because we do keep them busy on field trips and things. Just giving parents the opportunity to know that their kids are going to get to school. They don't have to leave work to take their kids or pick them up. I know 15 isn't a lot, but it's definitely a need.
And so you currently have school agers and do before and after school care. That's not a new thing. They're just incorporated within that 100.
Correct.
Okay. And so although you're saying your number's 15, technically that would be an expansion from your use permit from 100 to 145.
Correct.
Okay.
While DHHS says we can be licensed for this many kids because it's based on square footage,
You don't have the space.
Staffing wise and just how we run our program, we would not fill those classrooms to capacity. Kids need room to move and play, and if we maxed it out at that, it would be.
But it's not new that there will be vans taking the kids to and from school, because that's already happening. You're
Correct.
using that in the summer for your current programming. It's just the number of school agers will be more than it is currently.
Correct.
Okay.
Can you kind of walk us through, hopefully there's still a map up there, like how people are supposed to, drop off, like what the pattern should be for the traffic flow?
It'll just take a second.
So previously, as Ben mentioned, some parents were kind of pulling up directly to the building. And then once we reminded them that that is a drop-off zone, and so they need to parallel park, they've been doing a great job at doing that. So I would say if a family has one kiddo, they're probably in and out within 7 to 8 minutes at most. If they're dropping off 2 kids, probably 10 minutes after they touch base with the teachers and get the kids settled.
But can you kind of point and show like what you're expecting them to do? So they're supposed to pull in, parallel park, and then how are they supposed to exit?
So then they drive down through here and exit over here, which is where these other businesses exit as well.
And do you kind of give instructions to your parents that that is the expected flow?
Yes.
And then where do you tell your employees to park?
So our employees park over here in the lot next to the parking lot, and then also in these spaces that are right north of our parking lot. So none of our employees park over here. I have seen 1 or 2 parents who will park there in the mornings to go drop off, and they walk up to the building, but that's generally right when between that 7 and 7:45 hour.
Do you have parents that are maybe parking on the street to bring their kids in? I mean, if the drive-through lane is full.
We don't. We have a couple older teachers that were parking there because this is a little bit of a hill. And so it was a little bit of a challenge for a couple of them to walk up that hill. And so we've since asked them to make sure they're parking in our parking lot, and they've been doing that.
Other questions for the applicant? Yeah, Rich?
Just curious, the numbers 130 that you're hoping to expand up to 145, is that the number of children that can be in the facility at one time? Or is that how many people you're under contract to serve? How does that work?
So with DHHS, it would be what we could have in the facility at one time. With part-time kids before and after, we would never have over 110.
So during the day, like when the school agers aren't there during the school year?
Correct.
Right. Tell us a little bit about how you navigate the 145 kiddos and the playground.
So we have our playground divvied up by ages. So that bigger playground to the north is school age and pre-K. And then along the back side of the building, you can't see the fence very well on here, but we've got we actually have 4 smaller playgrounds on the back side. So we've got a preschool playground, a toddler playground, and then on the south side of our building is our infant playground.
Right.
And that's all fenced off, so they don't, have to go outside, and then inside the playground area, it's all enclosed.
Correct.
Access the playgrounds from? Where's the?
On the east side of our building, our classrooms have doors that exit, and then we also have a hallway. So the classrooms that are on the west side of the building will go through the hallway, so they're not going through the parking lot to access that.
Additional questions for the applicant right now?
What's your hours of operation?
We are open 6:30 to 6, closed on all the major holidays.
Thank you.
And have you been the operator since the onset, since the beginning?
No, we actually took this center over in 2020, right at the beginning of COVID.
Okay. That was fun.
It was a learning opportunity.
Yes.
We have 3 centers in Omaha, and this was our 4th center. And we were very lucky to not have to close during COVID and actually grew during that time.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, right now we will take testimony in support of this application. Is there any testimony in support?
Hello, everyone. Christina Melgoza with Kruger Development. I have to look at our address. We just moved, 8501 South 78th Street in Lincoln. Even though it's owned by Southridge Village LLC, Kruger Development is still kind of the manager, landlord of this building, and we are in favor and support of the expansion project. I don't know of a complaint to our office that has ever come in for the building or for the children, so we're definitely in favor of them having more before and after school programming. We did help hold a neighborhood meeting back in May, which Steve actually came to as well, and no one showed up. So we were hoping to address any issues at that time, but we're not able to. We are happy if it would help with this process to put up maybe some reduced speed signs. I'm not really sure what would go into putting in the speed bump, as Steve said, but putting up some directional signs or putting up, minimal 5 mile per hour signs, that's definitely something we can do. And I've even put up stop signs in that development before, since everything is private. So we could easily do that to help out. I know a lot of those opposition letters that came in had to do with that shared parking, and hopefully that became a little bit more clear on how that shouldn't be a specific issue in this case, since it's all non-congruent. And I'm not sure if Natasha specifically hit this point, but I think a lot of the children that will be coming are a part of families who already attend the daycare. So it's either a toddler who's already there and their older school-age sibling is also then going to join in. So I think it's already serving a lot of families who currently would be a part of that traffic flow. Oh, and we could look into moving a dumpster too if that's blocking anything. But if there's anything else specifically that we could address as the landlord, please let me know. But I think that covers a lot of those bases.
Actually, the dumpster was one thing I was going to mention.
Oh.
So that dumpster is serving which properties?
I might have to ask our commercial property manager, Allison.
So if you need to
If you can come up, that'd be great.
I do not know the daily.
Sure,
those
understood.
specifics.
And then if you can state your name and your address for the record, please.
Absolutely. My name's Allison Santana. Address is 8501 South 78th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Thank you.
So Southridge Village, all the dumpsters, any of the businesses can utilize them. So they're not designated to specific businesses. If you wanted to walk across that area and put your trash in a different dumpster, you definitely can do that, but not required to.
So in this area, can you point out exactly where the dumpsters are?
Let's see here. There's a dumpster right here,
Okay,
and there's a dumpster right here.
okay.
And I believe there's a dumpster. Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Okay, there's a dumpster over here by the daycare, and there's a dumpster here in the corner. And then if you continue north, there's dumpsters throughout Southridge Village
Okay.
that are accessible for all the businesses within the shopping center.
Okay. And so there's been some discussion as to one of those two dumpsters creating visibility concerns as folks are kind of exiting out of the daycare area or following the path to the egress. I assume, it would be the one as you're leaving, but
The one here, yeah, there's bricks around it to kind of make it look nicer. In the shopping center, we want it to look sharp there. So if that's an issue, we're willing to make adjustments to help Hamilton Heights get that additional capacity to serve school agers. And I think the capacity for school agers is either 15-to-1 kids or 16-to-1 kids. So the ratio is really just calling for one additional staff member, which would take up one parking stall in the shopping center. And then, like Christina had mentioned, a lot of these kids that are already being served in the center. They have siblings that want to enroll in the program. So it's not necessarily more traffic coming into the shopping center, it's just more children being carported within those vehicles. And also, as Natasha was mentioning, a lot of the kids are doing like before and after school, or maybe some of them are just doing before or after school. Daycare is like a revolving door. I have 4 kids, and I took one of mine to Hamilton Heights. So we know that the kids, they come in and out, but the transportation from the school is going to be transporting X amount of kids, not because we're serving these kids, we have X amount of more vehicles in the shopping center necessarily.
Yep, understood. Now, one of the things that we clarified with staff was that the planning department hasn't received a lot of complaints with regard to this during the 15 years of the use permit. As the manager or landlord, have you fielded some concerns with regard to some of the other tenants with regard to the child care center?
Regarding the child care center, I haven't had complaints regarding the center.
Other questions for the applicant?
Or
for the testimony and support, sorry.
how were the applicants notified about the neighborhood meeting?
They were sent out a letter.
I received the mailing list from the city here on that, what is the 200-foot
Yeah.
radius? Yep, so we use those mailing labels.
Okay. So I think you said that one
Trash receptacle?
has an enclosure there, so you can't, even if you move the dumpster, you would still have the brick facade there.
Or we would knock it down, is what we would do.
Okay.
If we were to move the dumpsters, I would imagine that we would knock down the enclosure around it and reconstruct it somewhere else.
Yeah, if it truly is a visual issue, we'd want to take care of that either way, whether this.
Sure.
I don't know how big of a deal it is, but on the plan that we have, that one dumpster is not shown to be there. It's shown to be somewhere else, so I don't know if that's a huge deal or not, but
On the site plan.
yeah.
That one right there.
So the site plan is showing a dumpster enclosure by the playground. Again, I don't know how big of a deal that is, but.
Do they have one right there?
Shows up on the photo of the
Right,
location.
see
I know, but
Well,
then
and
just
even
move it
on
over there.
that,
Well,
like the Kruger development
what I'm trying to
piece.
say is it's not approved to have a dumpster right there.
Yeah, I hear what you're
In this
saying.
spot. And to me, that's the one I thought that might have been, if someone was driving here, that's maybe cutting off a little
Problem.
vision. So I think that's an easy move. That doesn't have an enclosure around it, does it?
Looks like
It
it.
shouldn't
like it
because it's
does.
not on the site plan.
Yeah.
Other questions, comments? Great, thank you very much
Thank
for your
you.
testimony. Other testimony in support of this application? Is there any other testimony in support? Is there any neutral testimony or testimony in opposition? Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
Marsha Roberts with Acesa Total Healthcare. And our office address is 7160 South 29th Street, Suite number 7, which is in the middle of the buildings, just to the north of the daycare.
Okay, thank you.
I did send in a letter, which I'm sure that you all read, so we won't go over that in too much detail, but we have had meetings with Rick Kruger in opposition to the traffic flow in that parking lot. And he told us that he would be taking care of that. We asked him to put up signs. We asked him to put in speed bumps. We're trying to, slow down that traffic. I personally have been almost hit 3 times by traffic coming from the daycare. I've seen parents parking on, where's your map? We'll put your map back in there.
It's that one right in front
I
of
think
you.
it's right by
This
your
one?
hand.
Yeah, just put it on the screen.
Right here? I've never done this before.
There you go.
Okay,
No problem.
Pull it down a little bit. There you go. Perfect.
okay. So, on the north side here of this line, the parking, I have witnessed parents coming in here, across here, up over here, and across the sidewalk. I've witnessed them exiting the same way, and they're avoiding this traffic here. They're just going too fast. And, you know, when you try and talk to them and say, hey, you know, can you slow it down? I mean, everybody's kind of frustrated, they're stressed, and I get that, but not cooperating. So that's a concern, and I know that we cannot control other people's behaviors. But I think that there are some things that we can do. If it's moving the dumpsters so that they can see around, see who's coming from one direction or the other so that we don't bump heads, I think that that's a good solution. It's concerning that we had meetings with Kruger and they're not being acknowledged today. It's very concerning. I have never received a notice for a meeting within the community, except for this one that I got 3 days ago. And so I'm giving 3 days to try to, you know, come before you today and share my story and our story with the other business owners along there. We have increased traffic with our businesses. We're all small business owners. And thank goodness, because like, I can't remember your name, the one that just, you know, bought the daycare right at the beginning of COVID, we opened our doors at the same time. We survived, and now we're flourishing. And so that means more traffic for our business, more traffic for the others along there. There's a couple new companies that just got up and running again. So I'm very, very concerned about that traffic pattern. Very concerned about the parking. As a healthcare provider, just really worried about the safety. Seeing children running outside of the fences across the parking lot, chasing balls, and then a caregiver running after them. That's very concerning to me. I've seen that happen twice just in the last couple months. And fortunately, I was the one that was driving down, and I was stopping, I was watching and letting them run across in front of me. So this is my personal experience. Have I filed a formal complaint against the daycare? No. Have I talked to Kruger? Yes. So we're trying to use the best time that we have in our day to grow our businesses and keep each other safe. So if we can control the traffic, and then in lieu of the other apartments that are coming in, utilize street parking. I don't know if that's an option. I have not looked into that, but that's what Kruger had told us, is that they made the street wide enough so that you could have off-street parking and cut down on the flow of people going through the facilities, so, or the complex. But those are my main concerns. I do have a letter here that I would like to submit, so I don't know how to do that.
I'll take it.
I can take it.
I think there's copies for everybody.
Thank you.
This is just one other thought. It points out, in short, that the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County Code on early child care facilities, that the number of spaces, I'm just going to read that paragraph to you. 1 space per employee on the largest shift, plus off-street loading, unloading areas for 1 automobile per 10 care receivers. Joint parking with another use is acceptable if the early childhood care facility and others have non-concurrent parking demands. Now, our parking demands for our businesses is between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. Those are our core hours. And then we have later hours and Saturday and Sunday hours by appointment only. So it's clear to me that there is not enough room for all of this if they are parking in our area and going through. It's non-concurrent parking that's there.
Any questions for this
Yes, I
testifier?
do. How long ago, in general, were your conversations with Kruger? Were they like a month ago, a year ago?
We've had two, because that's how many we could get in front of them. One was last year, and one was the year before.
Okay. Thank you.
Rich, did you have any?
That was my question.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep, additional testimony in opposition.
Hi.
Hello.
Phil Michael, 2814 Lawson Drive, Lincoln. So I live in the Townhome Association to the south and west of the daycare facility. In fact, I live in the extreme southwest portion. But there have been a number of complaints from our members, specifically parking complaints, that daycare workers have been parking on Porter Ridge Road. You know, these are fairly dense. There's room for mailboxes, but not to have people parked on that street. And the mail will not get out of their trucks to deliver the mail. So there have been people that have not gotten their mail because of it. They have spoken to the daycare, and yeah, I'm not sure that's been fixed. Okay, and I'm not affected by this, but I do have one thing that I think's personally very important as a grandfather. The traffic flow here coming from the north is turning across 29th Street, right on the brink of the hill, the military brink to be exact, not on the top of the hill, but near the top, which is far more dangerous. I go out on 29th periodically, and I've had young mothers, I'm sure they're in a hurry, God love them, but turn in front of me in the morning. Sooner or later, a young mother is going to get hit on the brink of that hill. So, our association, we're not xenophobic, nor are we afraid of change, but we've had a lot of change thanks to Kruger. It's been, in 20-some years, there's been a plethora of variances, zoning changes, and the last one, thanks to the city council, they lowered his apartment complex from 5 to 3. But that parking has not gotten there yet because they're not open. And within the next year, we would assume that that'll open and there'll be excess parking. And I'm not sure about the statement that the street's doubly wide for parking on both sides. I'm not sure about that.
Sure.
So I'm in opposition. Any questions? I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Questions? Thank you very much for your testimony.
Thanks indeed. Appreciate your time.
Additional testimony in opposition.
I move to close the pub.
No, we're not done.
Oh, yeah, rebuttal. I'll learn this yet.
Additional staff questions at this time. Yeah. Come on up, Ben. Tracy?
I'm still going back to my original thing. Can we put restrictions on, here's where I'm sitting. I think this is a good plan, but I think that there needs to be things done to this parking lot. And this is, I don't think I can vote yes for this unless those are conditions of this. So can we do that? I'm talking about like maybe parking barriers so people can't drive over the sidewalk, or, a speed bump internal, or moving I don't feel comfortable voting yes for that unless I know those things are gonna get done. So can we put that in there?
Yes, I think they could be put in there, like Steve noted, with where exactly they're going. We'd have to pinpoint onto the site plan.
Or I think they should go, but I don't know.
I do want to note across the city, generally, we do not, when it gets down to a site plan, even note where things like dumpsters are going on site plan, so it never gets down to that small of a aspect on a site plan. So just with this showing a dumpster is a little out of the norm in setting where those are going to be within a private use permit parking lot.
Do we ever do any internal traffic on a private?
Not to my knowledge. Steve.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks.
So that's the sidewalk that's listed there. It goes through the residential area and connects into 30th Street. Goes clear across that lot. So is that all owned by this same person, even though it goes all the way over to 30th Street in between the residential houses over there?
Yes, that'd be all within the use permit, all owned.
So it goes clear over
Clear through.
to 30th. So it goes between two houses up there, right?
So then that would then go into the neighborhood within like a public access pedestrian way.
So on public access, if that is their route, can we require the curb? That sidewalk gives me, use a wheelchair, I'm the size of a 4-year-old. If there's not curb stops there, they are going to cut right through there. There should be curb stops there. There's no way around it. Can we require that?
So you're saying where the sidewalk crossing is?
The sidewalk goes from there, it goes clear over into that residential area, clear over to 30th.
See it on the screen because the map isn't in the right
Yeah,
spot.
if it goes outside of the area of the special permit, it's outside the area of this review.
Right, but that sidewalk is still in the special permit, and it's a sidewalk with parking on both sides with no curb stops.
That photo is hard to see because of the, when I pull it up on Google Maps, it appears that there is a shadow, like that it is maybe raised up a teeny bit. And I was wondering if that's why they called it the lower parking. It doesn't look like there is, it looks like if somebody wanted to, not on this side, but it looks like there is on this side. So if somebody wanted to drive over it, they certainly could, but it does look like there is a bit of a curb there.
So if I could help explain a little bit. So we have parking lot design standards, the width of the stall, the width of the aisles, the depth, but that is it. We have building and safety, we have planning, we have 5 planners who handle development review. We do not have the staff, nor is it a requirement that we get into every single, let's call it a micro issue, in terms of the design and layout of it. We're just making sure there's a number of parking stalls, those stalls the proper width and things. But the other items are left to the management company. And as your discussion here shows, all of us here, myself included, aren't experts on what is the exact solution here, because you may find by moving this there, oh, hold it, now that person isn't happy with the dumpster there. So those are challenges. I'm not saying it's not appropriate that it be addressed, but all of those are the issues between the tenant and the landlord, and not really issues of the special permit. So it is a challenge when one person's opinion is, oh, they're going too fast, here's the solution, when people might have other solutions that are also just as good. But those are really all management company issues within the site. And it's also the challenge we find even in setting regulations. If we set regulations based on the bad behavior of 0.1% of the population, we'd never get anything done because a lot of people do really stupid things. And so it's very hard to say, oh, we're going to do this, this, and this to stop something that happens very infrequently. I can add just for information, because we measured it, yes, 29th Street is wider than our typical local street, which is 27 feet wide. It looks like it's probably about 38 feet wide, which would make sense that they added 11 feet, which allows for parking on both sides of the street and still two-way traffic. And would just note in a general sense, when there's a lot of on-street parking on streets, people actually tend to drive much slower because they're worried about car doors opening and everything else. So parking on the street sometimes is not a bad solution to if the concern is slowing things down. But certainly 29th Street is really something up to Lincoln Transportation and Utilities to look at in the bigger picture of where they would have speed bumps there. And what we're recommending is that, yes, you do have the ability to amend the conditions within the special permit to say X, Y, and Z should happen. It's just really a challenge to know what would be the best solution.
There was some discussion in one of the letters that we received about there now being a no parking sign somewhere on the street that was that had been recently added for a portion of 29th Street. Do you know where that is?
I do not, but Bob Simmering with LTU may be able to.
Okay,
might be able to
excellent.
answer that for me.
Thought you were going to get a pass, didn't you, Bob?
I thought, I wonder if it's because of all the
was trying
the
to get
construction.
I know.
'Cause of
Bob
those.
Simmering, LTU, but I'm going to make this very easy. I do not know where the no parking area is.
Okay, but does that seem accurate that there had been one that was added?
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you.
Or if it's permanent or temporary based on all the construction.
That I don't
mean,
know.
That's the,
With a street that wide, it would typically not have no parking restriction.
The neighbors could go in and follow the process, though, of filing a permit and getting the signatures to put up signs.
Definitely could come in and request a study and some intervention by LTU, and it would be based on, a traffic information that we collect, and certainly if it was justified, it could happen, but it would certainly need justification for that to happen.
Anything else for Bob? Thank you very much. Anything else for Ben? I don't think I have anything. Thank you very much. Checking things out for us, aren't you, Steve?
Yes, it's amazing what you can find on Google Street View sometimes. So yes, it shows I don't know if this is a sign that is being referenced. And when the applicant, who's there all the time, is in rebuttal, they can certainly point it out. But yes, it does show that there is over here on this side of the street, and no parking sign pointing from here to Porter Ridge Road, just so people don't park close to the intersection, and that is done often in a lot of neighborhoods to try to make sure that the intersections are kept clear.
Great, thank
But
you.
the applicant hopefully can address that better.
Great. Applicant rebuttal.
As far as the no parking sign that was added within the last couple months,
Okay.
it's about probably 15, 20 feet from the corner.
Okay.
As far as my staff parking on Porter Ridge Road, when I have spoke to the neighbors, when they've called to address it, it was never that they were parking on Porter Ridge Road. They tend to, as you can see here, park right here. There might be a couple here, and then there were a couple over here. But to my knowledge, there are no mailboxes, I can tell you that, where my staff was parking. So I'm not sure what mailboxes that gentleman was referring to.
Sure. Anything else you want to bring to our attention?
And I also just want to reiterate that it's not increased traffic that's coming from us. We're just asking that we can take some of the school agers from current families, have some space for them. So it's not going to increase the traffic that is coming through our parking lot.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
The sidewalk that's on the, in between those two lines of cars, the one side does look like there's a curb. Is there a curb on the other side of it?
There is.
There's a curb on
Yes.
both sides. Somebody hopped the curb to go
No.
through there.
There is, so the sidewalk I believe that they're referencing
Yeah.
goes right here.
Mhm.
There's a curb on the north side. There is not a curb on the south side.
That's what I went to.
My staff parks along here. Generally, there are 5 to 6 spots open at the end of the spot that we don't need.
Gotcha.
Rarely do I see any cars parked over here. So my team is not taking up parking spots to the north of us.
But have you seen, do people drive across it?
I have not seen that.
Hello.
Yes.
I wanted to come up here and talk a minute about Marcia's comment that she made regarding meeting with Kruger Development about parking. I was never involved in any meetings about that. I did meet with Marcia regarding signage. Where this dumpster is, actually, I've met with 2 of the owners. This building here is not owned by Kruger Development. It's condoed out. And so the...
One directly to the north?
Yes. So they're part of the association. Southridge Village manages the is managed by Kruger Development. And so I know that I've met with Marcia. We've had lengthy phone calls about adding a monument sign over here on 29th Street, and how the signage is essential to driving traffic. So there's been meetings regarding that, and I know that a lot of the owners in this building here have met with Southridge Village regarding, there was a hailstorm, and so the roof needed replaced. So I know there was a meeting also regarding that. I wasn't part of that meeting, but personally, I did meet with, talked to her on the phone regarding signage and a monument sign. And we, as a management group, we're not allowing the businesses to put out monument signs. We do have a marquee, electronic marquee, where we're happy to advertise at no cost to the members of Southridge Village.
With regard to the egress, where the folks from the child care facility are, after they've dropped off or picked up and leaving the parking lot, that's both, I mean, you can come in and out of that
It's not one way, there's no sign that says one way, correct, yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know that I've seen traffic come out of here, but there's not signage saying it's one way. I think the flow, though, is generally going this way. You can also access through up here to come in through the shopping center. So there's other access points further north that can regulate the traffic there.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I move to close public hearing.
Second, Core.
Shelley?
Core,
Yes.
Edens,
Yes.
Joy,
Yes.
Rodenberg,
Yes.
Ryman Yost,
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Public hearing closed.
I move to approve special permit 08052A.
Is there a second?
Second, Joy.
Discussion.
We need more daycares in this city. I don't think it's gonna add that much more traffic, especially when you're really looking at school-age kids only. The school agers are gonna come because their younger siblings are already there. I think there are improvements that need done to some of the traffic flow, curb stops, whether a speed bump should be needed. I don't think those conversations should stop, and I think your phone's gonna get some phone calls from businesses that are really gonna advocate for that.
Other?
Wanted to second this motion to talk a little bit more about the traffic control and the things that you guys have talked about doing. One of the other things, and Tracy will probably bring it up more than I would, is to redo that meeting and go door to door with the businesses so that you can get everybody on the same page. You're not gonna make everybody happy, but it would be an opportunity to be team building potentially. I will support the motion based on other things that we do in planning and based on some of the other discussions, and would like to have additional conversations internally to help with that traffic and your adjacent building owners.
I realize that these are issues between the landlord and the tenant, but I kind of hate to reward bad behavior. And I don't know what you want to call him, the owner, the developer, the manager of this area has has been difficult to work with before and caused problems. And so, I know that we need daycare. I know that this isn't going to be that much of an increase in traffic, but I'm going to vote no just because of the simple fact that this person has a track record that I've seen over my tenure, and it's nothing against the daycare, but you have to be a good owner manager in order to facilitate these kinds of things.
But Tracy, the daycare is the applicant, not the manager.
Agreed. That's why I said that.
Okay, I'm just saying you're about rewarding bad behavior. It's not the bad behavior of the applicant that we're talking about.
Well, it sort of is, because their employees were parking on 29th Street. But, so it's a little bit of both, I think. They've cleaned up their act, but some of these other things haven't been resolved. And I guess if they were resolved before they came to us, if they would have had a productive neighborhood meeting where they were sure and reached out to people, then I would be more inclined to support it. But I think there's some more work that needs to be done here. And so I'm not going to support it.
Okay. Anyone else?
I will be voting to support it, but I would also reiterate the opening comments that although this is final action, those opposed, if it goes through or if it doesn't pass, the applicant can appeal to the city council, and that would give you some weeks that I would really hope that all the shop owners and the neighbors start working with Kruger Development and see if you can come to a satisfactory compromise before it goes to the city council. And you'll have another day to explain things, and hopefully by that time the developer and the shop owners can come up with some traffic calming and storage, trash bin relocation areas, and address all of the concerns that were brought up here today. And I do appreciate all of the letters. I think we probably had close to 20 letters, many in support and many in opposition. So I would hope that you can get with the developer and come up with some traffic calming ideas and other things that would make this whole area safer and more convenient for the people that will be using it.
I will also be voting to support this application. Agreed that the need for licensed care for kids in our community is very high. And I also know that if managing the drop-off and pickup of a child care center or any children was an easy thing to manage, then principals of every elementary school in the city would be cheering, because anyone who's ever been in a drop-off or pickup line knows that it can go great 20 days, and then one day somebody new comes, or somebody is in a rush, or there's an emergency, or their kid just puked or whatever, and it throws everything off. And there's always an entitled person who thinks they can jump to the front of the line.
Trust me, I live across from an elementary school, and they block my driveway almost every day.
Yeah, it is a.
Okay,
it is,
let's stay on.
Yeah, so
let's
it
stay
is
on task.
It's a.
I know.
You're bad about school drop-offs. Come on.
Right. I do think it is an ongoing challenge, and so I think that the idea that when there have been things I appreciate the applicant said that as people have said, we're concerned about where the employees are parking, then you talk to the employees, and the employees have changed it. So I appreciate that, and I just think that speaks highly to the way in which you're wanting to be a good neighbor and in the way in which you're conducting your business. And so I appreciate hearing that when those have been brought to your attention, you've worked to address them. So thank you.
Okay, I am voting to support this application, honestly, without any qualms or reservations. I feel like there are some growing pains in this area, as was mentioned by some of the folks who testified today, which we always appreciate, and provides context on how the decisions that are made here do affect real people and real businesses, and we absolutely understand that. But as those businesses begin to thrive, there is additional parking in this area. I'm not sure that all of the parking challenges can be attributed to the daycare center. And especially, although on its face, that jump from 100 to 160 children may seem like a lot. The reality is that with the other licensing issues and with the the reality of the families that they're serving, the actual effect on traffic will not be quite as apparent as that number might suggest. And I do think that there is additional room to work with the landlord and the manager of this property to ensure that all folks can get some opportunities to have their grievances addressed. But I do believe that these are landlord-tenant issues and not zoning issues, and I will be voting to support it. Shelley?
Core.
Yes, I mean, no.
Edens.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
Approved 5-1.
At this time, anyone wishing to speak on an item not on the agenda may do so. Seeing none, I will take a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Second, Core.
Shelley?
Core.
Yes.
Edens.
Yes.
Joy.
Yes.
Rodenberg.
Yes.
Ryman Yost.
Yes.
Edgerton.
Yes.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.